Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Dr. Eskaim. Hope that you are doing well. So today we continue with the second part of oogenesis in women. I mean part 2 after the puberty. So we will talk about the phase 2, and at the end of our presentation we will talk about menopause. But before all this, let's start by remind. So as you know, at the end of the phase 1, all the events are blocked. Okay, I mean the oocytes 1 are blocked in prophase 1, which is the first step of meiosis, and all the follicles are blocked in primordial step, and this blockage lasts until puberty. Okay, so the phase 2 marks the beginning of new events and the beginning of this phase, which lasts from puberty until menopause. And during this phase, there are four events, four important events that are summarized. So these events start by the reception of the follicular cycle, and then the meiosis of oocytes 1, after that the ovulation, and finally the beginning of luteal cycle. Okay, so let's start directly by the first event, which is the reception of the follicular cycle. So as you know, the follicular cycle started in the phase 1 by the formation of primordial follicles. Okay, so at the puberty, the young women have only 5 to 400,000 of primordial follicles. Okay, not all this number will resume in a follicular cycle, but in a woman only one primordial follicle will resume its follicular cycle in order to form a mature follicle called Dugraph mature follicle. Okay, but this transformation is not done directly, but gradually. Okay, so the primordial follicle will transform to a primary follicle, which is larger, and then the primary follicle will transform to secondary follicle, and after the secondary follicle will transform to tertiary follicle, and finally the tertiary follicle will transform to digraph follicle, and that's what we call follicle cycle, and it lasts in average 14 days. Okay, it's different from a woman to another, but in general we are talking about 14 days. Okay, so let's follow this transformation. So here you have the first picture, which show the primordial follicle, and as you can see, the primordial follicle is composed from one oocyte blocked in prophase 1, surrounded by one layer of flattened follicular cells. Okay, so the cells here are flattened. Okay, and this follicle will transform to a larger follicle. So you can see that primary follicle is larger than primordial follicle, and it's composed from one oocyte 1 blocked in prophase 1, but here it's surrounded by one layer, but the follicular cells form is cubic. Okay, so this is one layer of cubic follicular cells. Okay, and then the primary follicle will transform to another follicle larger, which is the secondary follicle. So as you can see, this follicle is still composed by one oocyte 1 blocked in prophase 1, but here it's surrounded by 2 or 3 layers of cubic follicular cells. Okay, so that's what we call a secondary follicle, and then the secondary follicle will transform to a bigger or to a larger follicle, which is tertiary follicle. So as you can see, the tertiary follicle is completely different comparing to the secondary and the primary follicle. Okay, so indeed it's composed from a new component, and we'll discover this component. So let's start by the first component, which is the sex cell. and which is the oocyte1 blocked in prophase 1. Okay, so this cell is surrounded by one layer of glycoproteins. This space is formed from combination between glucose and protein, and this layer is called pellucid zone. Okay, after that, the pellucid zone is surrounded by one layer of a series of follicular cells. Okay, and this series is called corona radiata. Okay, after the corona radiata, in in this space, we can discover this void, or this cavity, or this vacuum, which is new, and it's called enterome, and that's why the tertiary follicle, we can also call it cavitary follicle. Okay, so the cavity or the vacuum is in the follicle. Okay, and then this vacuum is limited by many cells, as you can see. Okay, and these cells are called granulosa. They are follicular cells, but still but we can't say one layer or two layers. They are very crowded. That's why we call them granulosa. Okay, and on the granulosa, we find the last layer of new tissue, which is connective tissue, and it is called theca. Okay, so let's summarize. From the outside to the inside, we have theca, granulosa, enterome, corona radiata, pellucid zone, and the sex cell, which is oocyte1, blocked in prophase 1. Okay, so the follicle continue its development and transform to a larger follicle, which is Degraaff follicle or major follicle. So as you can see, the major follicle is like the tertiary follicle, but it is larger. Okay, the size is different, but the components are the same. I mean, theca, enterome, and here you can see that the enterome is huge comparing to tertiary follicle. And then you have corona radiata, you have pellucid zone, and you have the sex cell, which is oocyte1 blocked in prophase 1. Okay, so this formation of the Degraaff follicle marks the end of the follicular cycle. Okay, and the end of the first event, which is the reception of follicular cycle. What happened then? So immediately the second event happened concerning the sex cell, which is the oocyte1. So let's remember that the oocyte1 are blocked in prophase 1. Okay, so at this, and they are in the mature follicle, so they receive hormonal signal, and this hormonal signal will allow them to unblock, and in order to continue this firstly the first step of meiosis, which is reduction phase, and they form two different cells, large cells, large cell, large haploid cell called oocyte2, and small haploid cell called polar body. Okay, and the polar body is here only to get the half party of chromosomes. Okay, and then the oocyte2 continue directly the second phase of meiosis, which is the equation phase, but another important event will happen. In fact, this cell will block in metaphase 2 of meiosis 2. Okay, this blockage is under hormonal signal, and our cell transformed to oocyte2 blocked in metaphase 2. Okay, and this cell, which is oocyte2 blocked in metaphase 2 with its polar body, will undergo an important event, which is the third event in this phase, and it is ovulation. So let's know directly what is ovulation. So the ovulation is so as said before, the oocyte 2 blocked in metaphase 2 with its polar body will be expelled out of the digraph follicle of the digraph mature follicle. Okay, so the digraph follicle will expel them out, and that's what we call ovulation. Okay, the digraph follicle will expel them out of the follicle. Okay, and out, of course, of the ovary. That's why we call this phenomena, we call it ovulation. Okay, so after the ovulation, what's happened? The fourth event will happen. So this fourth event concerns the beginning of the luteal cycle. Okay, we call it luteal cycle because it is under the effect of luteal hormone. Okay, and this cycle starts by the digraph, the MC digraph major follicle. I mean the digraph follicle when it expelled its sex cell, it's become empty or void. Okay, so this this empty digraph follicle will transform to a new structure called corpus luteum. This structure is responsible of the synthesis of progesterone, and progesterone, it's a hormone which had an important effect in the first months of pregnancy. Okay, this progesterone is synthesized by this structure, which is corpus luteum, for a period, and then the corpus luteum stop its activity and transform to another structure called corpus albicans. Okay, and this structure marks the end of the luteal cycle, which lasts in average 14 days. Okay, so you have 14 days for the follicular cycle and 14 days for luteal cycle. Okay, and by the formation of corpus albicans, a new signal is given to start a new follicular cycle with a new primordial follicle. Okay, and let's resume all this in this picture showing all the stages of oogenesis. So let's start by the first event, which is follicular phase or follicular cycle. So before puberty, as you know, all the follicles are in the primordial step. Okay, but at the puberty their development starts. Okay, for each cycle, primordial follicle will transform to primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, in order to form this major follicle, which is the graph major follicle. Okay, so this is the follicular phase, and it marks the end of the follicular phase. And then the graph follicle will expel the sex cell. Of course, the sex cell in the digraph follicle will receive hormonal signal and will finish its meiosis, and then it blocked in the metaphase 2, and with its polar body it will be expelled out of the follicle and out of the ovary. Okay, so this phenomena is called ovulation. Okay, and then the Degra follicle will transform to corpus luteum, which synthesize progesterone, and after, when it's stop synthesizing progesterone, it transforms to corpus albicans, and by its transformation, it gives a new signal to start a new follicular cycle by a new primordial follicle. All this happen in the ovary of the woman, okay, in the female system, reproductive system. Okay, so now, for all these events, we have an important notices to say for each cycle. Okay, so let's begin by the sixth cell, which is oocyte 2, and which is blocked in metaphase 2. So this cell, after ovulation, after to be expelled by uh, excuse me, by mature follicle. So after the ovulation, this cell is expelled in the fallopian tubes. Okay, so if it found some spermatozoa, I mean with the fertilization, so this oocyte finishes the second phase of meiosis, which is equation phase, and form two haploid cells. Okay, egg cell and the second polar body. Okay, but in case of no fertilization, I mean in the fallopian tubes there is no spermatozoa, so the egg can wait for 72 hours, for 3 days, and then it degenerates. Okay, so this is the first important notice concerning the sex. The second notice is concerning the corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum, after the ovulation, if there is fertilization, it continues its activity, which is the synthesis of progesterone, and it's continue its activity. But if there is no fertilization, so the activity is stopped, and it's that's why it's transformed to corpus albicans, which mark the end of luteal cycle. Okay, and the third important notice to know is that with these cycles, I mean follicular cycle and luteal cycle, there is a third cycle, which is menstrual cycle. So this cycle is activated during the oogenesis between the follicular cycle and the luteal cycle. Okay, and it happened in uterus by the formation of a mass of blood vessels, which called nest, the nest. Okay, so this nest have two destinies. So if there is fertilization, the nest is maintained, of course under the effect of progesterone. But if there is no fertilization, the nest is destroyed, causing the menstrual blood. That's why each woman has blood each month if there is no fertilization. Okay, this blood is the menstrual blood, which is the destruction of the nest, because there is no fertilization. Okay, so hope that you understood me. Okay, so at the final, before this, let's summarize all the oogenesis stages. So in this side we will talk about the sex cell, and in this side we will talk about the follicle development. Okay, so before puberty, the oogonium will multiply, and then they will degenerate, and the remaining oogonium will transform to primary oocytes, or oocyte 1, blocked in prophase 1. Okay, and this blockage lasts until puberty. Okay, and in parallel, these cells will associate with follicular cells and form primordial follicles, and all the primordial follicles stay blocked until puberty. At the puberty, the follicular cycle resume, and the primary follicle will transform to mature follicle gradually. And at this stage, it gives a hormonal signal to primary ovocyte to and blocks in order to continue the meiosis 1 and form two different cells. The larger cells is oocyte 2, and the smaller cell is first polar body. Okay, and then the secondary oocyte will continue with the meiosis 2, but it will be arrested in metaphase 2. Okay, and at this stage it's expelled out of the mature follicle. And then the mature follicle will transform to corpus luteum in order to synthesize the progesterone. And for the sex cell, if there is fertilization, if there is spermatozoa, it continue its meiosis and form the egg cell and the second polar body. Okay, so hope that you understood this picture. Okay, so at the final of our presentation, let's talk about the menopause, which is the the end of all the cycles. So this menopause, it's marked by the degeneracy of all primordial follicles. Okay, why? Because the primordial follicles degeneracy has started in the fetal life, okay, and continue until the menopause. And at the menopause, all the primordial follicle will be degenerated. Okay, so this will cause the complete stopping of all the cycles. I mean the follicular cycle, the luteal cycle, and the menstrual cycle. Okay, it's happened gradually, and it's happened in average from 45 to 60 years old. For each woman it's different, but this is the average. Okay, and as I said, the degeneracy has started from the fetal life and continue until the menopause. Okay, so I know that the video is too long, but thank you for your attention. Don't forget to let me your commentary or your questions if never you have questions, and don't forget to contact me on Telegram and on Facebook. For my part, see you for the next video, for the next course. Thank you for your attention.